When Americans speak of courage and sacrifice, few names shine brighter than that of Master Sergeant Roy P. Benavidez. His story is one of raw grit, defiance of fate, and unshakable loyalty to his brothers in arms. A man who overcame poverty, prejudice, crippling injuries, and the impossible odds of the Vietnam battlefield, Benavidez earned his place among the most legendary warriors in U.S. military history. This is the extraordinary journey of the man who survived 6 hours in hell, a rough beginning. Roy Benavidez's life began with hardship. Born on August 5, 1935 in Lindenau, Texas, to a Mexican father and Yaqui Indian mother, tragedy struck early. Both of his parents died when he was a child, leaving him and his siblings orphaned. He went to live with extended family in El Campo, but life there was not easy. At school, young Roy was bullied for his mixed heritage. Tired of the daily taunts and facing the crushing weight of poverty, he left school in 8th grade to help support his family by working in the fields and doing odd jobs. But deep inside, he longed for a way out, a chance to prove himself. At 19, he found it. He enlisted in the Texas Army National Guard, beginning a military career that would change not only his own life, but also the lives of the men he would one day save. Soldiering and setbacks. The Army quickly became the center of Benavidez's life. He completed airborne training and was assigned to the famed 82nd Airborne Division. By 1959, he married his lifelong partner, Hilaria Coy Benavidez, who would stand by him through every trial. In 1965, he deployed to Vietnam as an advisor to South Vietnamese troops. Just a year later, his career nearly ended in disaster. While disguised as a Viet Cong guerrilla during a classified mission, Benavidez stepped on a landmine. He was evacuated and returned to the U.S., where doctors grimly predicted he would never walk again. The blast had damaged his spine and left him paralyzed from the waist down. Confined to a wheelchair, Benavidez begged the Army not to discharge him. At night, when others thought he slept, he dragged himself across the hospital floor to strengthen his legs. He pushed against the walls, forcing his body to respond. Through sheer willpower, pain, and persistence, he proved the doctors wrong. 6 months later, astonishing everyone, he walked out of the hospital with his wife by his side. Determined not to settle for a desk job, he trained harder than ever and re-qualified for Special Forces, the elite Green Berets. Assigned to Detachment B-56 5th Special Forces Group, Benavidez returned to Vietnam in 1968, this time with a codename, Tango Mike Mike. The call to battle. On May 2, 1968, Benavidez was attending church when the frantic radio chatter caught his attention. A 12-man Special Forces reconnaissance team, including close friends of his, was trapped near the Cambodian border. Surrounded by nearly 1,000 North Vietnamese soldiers, their situation was desperate. Helicopters attempting to extract the men were shot out of the sky. The door gunner on one chopper, only 19 years old, died in Benavidez's arms when the helicopter returned riddled with bullets. For Benavidez, that was the final straw. He could not and would not abandon his friends. Armed only with a medical bag and his Bowie knife, he hadn't even grabbed his rifle in his rush. He jumped onto a helicopter heading into the maelstrom. 6 hours in hell. As the helicopter descended toward the firefight, Benavidez realized his comrades were too badly wounded to make it to the extraction zone on their own. Ignoring the torrent of enemy fire, he leapt into the jungle and sprinted toward them. Almost immediately, a bullet tore into his leg, but adrenaline drove him forward. Once he reached the wounded, Benavidez dragged them into defensive positions, administered morphine, and organized their return fire. He picked up discarded enemy weapons when his ran out of ammo. Bullets and grenades tore into him again and again, his thigh, his stomach, his back, but he refused to stop. He located the body of the team leader, Sergeant First Class Leroy Wright, who had been carrying sensitive intelligence. Benavidez attempted to drag him to safety but was struck again, knocked unconscious by shrapnel. When he awoke, he found the rescue helicopter had been shot down. Crawling through smoke and fire, he pulled survivors from the wreckage, established a perimeter, and called in airstrikes that dropped napalm on the advancing North Vietnamese. The respite didn't last. As soon as the jets left, the enemy closed in once more. Half blind from shrapnel in his face, bleeding from dozens of wounds, Benavidez refused to quit. At one point, a North Vietnamese soldier smashed him in the jaw with a rifle butt and stabbed him with a bayonet. Too weak to shout, he motioned for his comrade to fire, but the man was too drugged from morphine. Summoning every ounce of strength, Benavidez killed the enemy with his knife. By the time another helicopter finally arrived, Benavidez had been shot, stabbed, and beaten, but had saved at least 8 of his fellow soldiers. With his intestines spilling out from a stomach wound, he still made one last run to recover classified documents before collapsing onto the helicopter. The last man off the battlefield. Left for dead. When the rescue chopper reached safety, medics began unloading the wounded. From the outside, Benavidez looked like a corpse. His body bore 37 separate bullet, bayonet, and shrapnel wounds. His eyes were glued shut with blood. His jaw was broken. A medic placed him in a body bag. It was only when a friend recognized him and shouted his name that doctors hesitated. One insisted there was nothing that could be done. At that moment, Benavidez spat blood into the doctor's face, a defiant signal that he was still alive. It was enough. He was rushed into surgery, spending nearly a year in hospitals in Japan and Texas. Against all odds, he survived. Recognition and legacy. Initially, Benavidez's commander recommended him for the Distinguished Service Cross, fearing the Medal of Honor process would take too long and the badly wounded sergeant might not survive. But survive he did. On February 24, 1981, more than a decade after his heroics, President Ronald Reagan placed the Medal of Honor around Roy Benavidez's neck. Reagan, moved by the unbelievable account, famously said, "If the story of his heroism were a movie script, you would not believe it." Benavidez himself remained humble. "The real heroes," he often said, "are the ones who gave their lives for their country. I don't like to be called a hero. I just did what I was trained to do." He spent the rest of his life speaking to young people, especially students and soldiers, inspiring them with his story of perseverance, sacrifice, and honor. On November 29, 1998, Roy P. Benavidez passed away at the age of 63. He was laid to rest at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery in San Antonio, Texas, the man who wouldn't quit. Roy Benavidez's story is more than a tale of battlefield heroics. It's the story of a man who overcame every obstacle: poverty, prejudice, crippling injuries, and the full fury of enemy fire, through sheer determination and love for his comrades. His 6 hours in Vietnam stand as one of the most astonishing feats of courage in military history. But perhaps even more inspiring is the fact that he spent the rest of his life reminding others that ordinary people are capable of extraordinary things when they refuse to give up. Roy Benavidez is gone, but his legacy endures. A Green Beret who lived and died by the creed. De oppresso liber, to free the oppressed. And that was the incredible story of Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez, the Green Beret who survived 6 hours in hell to save his brothers in arms. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to hit the like button to support the channel. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss more powerful stories from history. And let us know in the comments what other heroes or moments in history you'd like us to cover next. Thanks for watching, and remember, history is full of lessons worth telling.